Welcome to another episode of Lasting Transformation with me, Alun Parry, the author of How to Remove Trauma Response, a Memory Reconsolidation guidebook for therapists and coaches. Now, what I'm going to look at in this particular episode is a coaching question, or a coaching phrase really, that I use an awful lot inside of my coaching academy, which is the place where therapists and coaches really focus on mastery of this process. And when I'm inside the coaching academy with my members, one of the things I often say is that the frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry some onions. And the reason why I say that will become clear in this episode, because in a similar sort of way, your client's brain doesn't care how you deliver memory reconsolidation. It just wants you to hit the beats that it needs, give the brain what it needs in order to trigger it. And so what I'm hoping will happen as you listen to this podcast episode is that your horizons really widen and you feel a lot more permission to innovate, to try things out. And really think of your way of doing therapy more like Lego than a strict protocol that you have to strictly stick to. So I know that it's very common for therapists and coaches to have this kind of low hum going in the background, which is basically that question of, am I doing this the right way? That thing where when you're in a session or maybe on a Sunday evening where you're thinking of the week ahead or reflecting on the week that's just gone, you're noticing those moments within the methodology that you use where you think, maybe I didn't do it the right way there. Or a time where the client said, well, that doesn't fit me. I don't like it that way. And some panic arose because I'm following this particular approach, this methodology, and the methodology says you do this next, but the client has basically gone and taken me in a completely different direction. What on earth do I do now? And so this episode is all about overcoming that difficulty, I suppose, for good. Because once you understand that actually, from the brain's point of view, you can build your therapy like someone who builds a tower, really, but using Lego pieces. That one person is going to do that with a whole different set of different Lego bricks, and another person will also get a tower with a completely different collection and style of bricks, and yet they'll both end up in the same way. And so I'm going to open that up for you here and really explain what I mean when I say the frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry some onions. So if you've done all the trainings, if you've read the books, if you've got the protocols and the approaches and the methodologies, and then you'll maybe watch a YouTube video and you'll see somebody who's doing therapy or coaching in a different style or a different way. And there's this flicker of anxiety or angst comes up and you're like, maybe I should be doing it that way. Maybe they're the ones who are doing this work properly. Maybe I am doing it wrong here and I should be doing it exactly the way they do it. I want you to, in this episode, realize that the focus isn't so much the style, isn't really necessarily even the methodology, although you might decide that you want to tweak some of those. What's really important is whether you're giving the brain what it needs. And so, like I say, the frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry some onions. And so in the same way, the brain doesn't care how you're doing the therapy as long as the way that you're doing it, the style that you lean into, ultimately gives it what it needs in order to trigger memory reconsolidation. And of course, memory reconsolidation is so important because it's the only known brain mechanism, biological innate brain mechanism, that can functionally erase old emotional learnings and trauma responses. So by the end of this episode, I'm hoping you'll understand that the style question, like, should I be doing it that way instead of this way? Is my style as a therapist wrong? Is actually not the best question, and what the better question actually is instead. So I'm going to talk about 3 different points. The first thing that I'm going to talk about initially is it's about this sense of the map as opposed to the protocol. And then what I want to talk about is just an analysis really of 2 different therapists, 2 different approaches, 2 different styles even, but trigger the same mechanism and both get transformation. And then finally, I want to look at that question. Am I doing it right? Should I be doing it the way they do it? Is my style wrong? And give you a better question. So let's start at the top then. Like I say, we're often stuck with this idea that we've done all of these trainings, we have a methodology, we have a particular approach, and so we have to stick to that. And that can be quite strict and quite rigid. But when you join the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy, one of the first things that I tell you, and I keep telling you this, is that we focus on a map, not a protocol. And the reason that we focus on a map is that memory reconsolidation, in order to happen, the brain has some requirements. I'm going to tell you what they are even, so hold tight on this because I'm going to give you the raw formula for memory reconsolidation. So it has some requirements, but it doesn't have a required style. It doesn't care about that. What it needs is for you to activate the old learning that's keeping the problem alive, the underlying core prediction that needs to be activated. And then there needs to be a mismatch experience, which basically disconfirms that old emotional learning. And then you repeat the bumping together of those 2. That's what the brain needs. So if you've got the activation, you've genuinely got a mismatch experience, you're bumping it together, that's it. That's what the brain ultimately needs to happen in order to be able to take an old emotional learning or trauma response that's getting in the way of life or is keeping a presenting problem alive and functionally erase it, update it. That's what the brain needs. Activate, mismatch, repeat. Now, within that formula, there's nothing there in terms of, well, when you activate it, you have to activate it in this particular way. You have to activate it with a conversation. You have to activate it with the imagination, or you have to activate it with interpretive dance. The brain doesn't care. It wants this to be activated so that you can quickly provide a mismatch experience and then bump the 2 together. And again, with the mismatch experience, the brain doesn't care. It might be imaginal. It might be something else entirely. It might be something that's happened in life that you've opportunistically grabbed hold of and allowed the client to sit with this new experience that is actually very different from the emotional learning that they came in with. But the brain doesn't care. Remember what I said? The frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry some onions. And so in the same way, as long as the brain is getting an activation, followed by a mismatch experience, followed by a repeat of that juxtaposition, the brain is perfectly happy for you to have any style, any approach, any methodology that is going to tick each of those boxes. And so this is why the map is so important. When you join the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy, you are given a map to follow that guides you towards that end point where the brain ultimately gets what it needs. You don't get a protocol. You don't get one strict way of doing it. You get a map and a collection of options. And it's a really important difference, because when you get a protocol, it tells you what to say. It tells you what has to come next. It gives you steps. Often they're very rigid. And so if a client says, well, no, and they take you in a different direction, which has happened to me countless times. I've had an idea for a session. The client says, I don't like that, Al. And we do something else. When I'm in that position, because I'm using a map, that's fine. We just use some other piece of Lego, to use that analogy again. We just use a different Lego brick than the one I'd initially presented. And they say, I don't like that Lego brick. Can we have another one? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's fine. Because I know what the job is of the session while I'm in that particular stage of the map. Because what I'm essentially doing is I'm out finding what the underlying learning is, grabbing the ingredients for a mismatch, and then delivering what the brain needs for reconsolidation to happen. So even when I get stuck, I'm never ever lost. I always know exactly what I should be doing at that moment. And it means that when we're in that lovely dance between us and our clients, the clients can have genuine autonomy to say no, to say, I don't want that. Or when some wonderful opportunity presents itself, we don't have to be in that angst of, oh, well, that's there and I can see the value of that, but I'm at this stage of the protocol and this is the next step, not that. It allows you all this kind of improvisational agility to do whatever the map requires you to do in that moment. And so, as we'll see in a moment, you'll find that some therapists will be in a place on the map doing this thing, and another therapist will be doing that completely different thing, but all with the same goal in mind. It's a little bit like if I were to go walk into a place and I took my sat nav with me, it would guide me to the place, even though I'm walking. And if I were to drive to the same place, it might guide me differently, because there are certain places I can't drive, but I can walk, little alleyways and so on. But again, it would drive me to the right place. It would guide me there. And so with a map, it doesn't actually matter then if I were to take a wrong turn, or if I would decide, I don't want to go down that road. This looks more scenic. I could take the scenic route, and the map would guide me. The map knows what my destination is. And so it's not going to force me to try and go down a route that doesn't feel right in the moment. And so this is why I think that many therapists end up really exhausted, because they're trying to hold all these different protocols in your head at once. You're trying to remember which technique is going to fit. You're second guessing whether you're doing it right. You're trying to be true to the protocol because there's a right way of doing it, supposedly. But beneath all of that, it's not necessarily clear why it's so important to do that next step of the protocol. Like, why is it so important to do that? Whereas when you join the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy and you get the map, you understand fully what the brain needs. You understand what your destination is. You understand why each stage of the map is important and what it's trying to do. And so that allows you the freedom to go, do you know what? I don't need to do the next step of the protocol there. It might be helpful a lot of the time. It's not helpful now. but I know what I'm meant to be doing here. I know broadly what my job is. I know what the stage of the map is and where I'm meant to get to next. So I'll just use something else. I realize I don't actually need to do that step of the protocol because there's this other thing that I can do, which is going to do the job just as well. And so, like I say, it gives you that improvisational energy and lets you let go of that sense of, oh no, am I doing it right? Oh no, I've stepped away from the protocol. Is that a problem? Will things just not work anymore? Because you'll know that even if you throw the entire protocol out of the window because your client doesn't want it, or maybe it's not getting good results for you, you can step into something else, which is doing the job that that stage of the map requires you to do. And so the relief that comes when you really don't need to memorize every step that you've ever learned and every technique that you've ever learned, you just need to know what you need to do in this stage of the map to move closer to giving the brain what it needs for memory reconsolidation to happen. And so when you join the coaching academy, what you'll learn is the map. You learn how to align to the map rather than the protocol. And the map gives you a lot more freedom, a lot more agility. And actually, the methods that you do know, which feel sort of contradictory and competitive to each other and in conflict and feel like a bit of a ragbag of different tools which don't work together, well, now they've got this unified structure. And so you'll be in a situation where you go, now I understand how I can use these together. Now I understand that rather than these being separate, distinct protocols and methodologies, actually, it's all just a bunch of Lego bricks. And I can borrow from this and choose from that one because now I understand exactly what I'm trying to do here. And I don't need to rigidly follow any protocol because I'm only doing that because I've not fully understood the map of getting the brain to what it needs to create transformational change. So it's a huge relief when we get to this point of aligning to the map instead. So one of the things I've said here is that the brain doesn't care about style. And I want to go into in this second part of the podcast episode, what does that actually look like in practice? So here, I'm going to show you two different therapists, two different styles, two different approaches, but the exact same mechanism. And hopefully this will again underscore and emphasize the point that I was making, that we can treat our therapy approaches now more like Lego, that you can actually build something by borrowing from the different things that you already know, maybe some things that I will show you inside the coaching academy as well, but you'll be able to treat this as Lego. That's the mind shift that I want you to come away with. So when you've got different practitioners delivering reconsolidation in genuinely different ways, what you'll realize is that as long as they're giving the brain what it needs, the wonderful thing is both of them are going to work. Just like if I walk to a destination or cycle to a destination or drive to a destination or get the bus to a destination, I'm going to end up in the same place too. So different practitioners can deliver reconsolidation in genuinely different ways, and both of them will work because the frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry the onions. The brain doesn't care what style, what methodology, as long as it's going to end up giving the brain what it needs. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there are lots of ways of doing this, but let's say some therapists might use the imagination and others would more use conversational. And these are choices that we've got. So I would say in my work, and of course it's not the right way, because I've just got a particular collection of Lego bricks that I've decided to build my wall with. It's no better than anybody else's wall, no worse than anybody else's wall who's achieving memory reconsolidation. It's just my style is that I tend to work more experientially, more using the imagination. And so when I'm bringing mismatches alive in the body, when I'm bringing discovery work where we're getting to the core prediction, I'm tending to use the body, the felt sense, and I'm using imaginational experiences in order to help people get there and create mismatch experiences in that particular way. Now, I do conversational styles as well, but I lean more into the experiential. But there are others inside the coaching academy who will actually be the other way around. They'll do both, but they will be more conversational. And so mismatches are arriving more through the dialogue, through using a really precisely placed question, a question that's designed to do whatever the imaginal work that I'm doing on that stage of the roadmap. They're using a question to do exactly the same job, but differently, different style. Like noticing what's in the room, noticing what's going well, or noticing episodes in life which might provide some sort of mismatch material, or even asking a question designed to pull some of that out. And so you'll see that therapist who leans more on the conversation and less on the imaginal is actually doing the work differently to me, who is the other way around. I'm still doing some conversation, but I'm leaning much more into the experiential. And yet, as long as we are able to activate the emotional learning that's keeping the client's problem alive, as long as we're then able to give a mismatch experience, as long as we're then able to bump those two together repeatedly, the brain gets what it needs in order to deliver and trigger memory reconsolidation. So me, with my experiential imaginational ways, and some of the members inside of the coaching academy, some of them follow more my style, but I always say to people, mine is not the right style. It's a style. I'm just chopping up my onions in a particular way, and the frying pan ain't going to care. And so those people in the academy who are doing a more conversational route, well, they're getting results as well, because neither is the right way. Neither is the real way. Neither is the advanced way or the proper way. They're both fluent in the same underlying language. They're just speaking it with different accents. And so my invite to you really is to notice what your own leaning is. Are you more of a conversational style? Are you more somatic? Are you more relational? Are you more imaginal? Because that leaning is not a limitation. That leaning that you question when you look at someone who does it very, very differently to you, and you think, oh, is that how I'm meant to be doing the work? Because I do it like this, but they're doing it like that, and that's getting results. Should I be more like that? Well, no, not necessarily. You might try it, you might like it, but they're all just Lego bricks towards building the right kind of wall. And so that leaning just happens to be your style. And unlike with most protocol teachings, which is telling you to forget the things that you already know because that's the only proper way to do the work, I'm saying the exact opposite. So even though there's one brain mechanism that we're all aiming for, what you'll notice here is that I'm actually encouraging you to have different styles, to have your own favorite approaches. Because when you join the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy, you'll find there are approaches. There's more than one. And much like a singer, for instance, like a top singer who's going round the arenas, they'll have a set list. And they might have not sung some songs from their back catalogue for years. They'll just fall into a set list. You too can have a set list. You too can have your own, not just your own styles, but your own favourite methodologies. And you can think, well, at this stage of the work, at this point of the roadmap, I like this way of doing it. And I like that way as my backup. And a different therapist within the academy will go, oh, that's interesting, because at that stage of the roadmap, I don't tend to use those ones. I tend to use this one. And I tend to use that one as my backup. And guess what? Both are right. So these choices, these styles, these selections, that's your instrument. And the mistake is trying to play someone else's instrument because you're told that there's a right way to do it. We're all aiming for the same destination. If we want truly transformational change, we have to aim at memory reconsolidation. But the real mastery is understanding that we don't need to be tied to a protocol. We need to relax into the map. And it's a map. And you do have tasks that you have to achieve in that map. But the how, both in terms of the style and in terms of the methodology, in terms of which bricks you decide to collect together in order to navigate your way through that map, they're all valid as long as they're getting you on the way to what the brain needs to achieve memory reconsolidation. Because as I keep saying, the brain has some needs, and activation, mismatch, repeat, that's what the brain's interested in. But like the frying pan that wants to fry the onions, it doesn't care how you chop them. So as long as you give the brain what it needs, you have complete freedom in how to do it. So we've looked at a couple of things here. We've looked at why the map is more important than the protocol. We've looked as well how two different therapists with different styles and different approaches and methodologies can nonetheless, because they're following the same map, arrive at the same transformational mechanism. And what I want to look now is just to focus on that question that says, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Because once you trust the mechanism, that anxious question dissolves and a better one takes its place. So that old question, you look on YouTube, you see someone doing some sort of therapy demo, looks really good, looks really powerful, but it's different from what you do. And you're like, oh no, am I doing it right? Shouldn't I be doing that? Or when you're with your protocol and you know that you've had a misstep, as they might think about it, because you've not followed it strictly according to plan. You're like, oh no, will it work now? Those questions, those anxieties are present, aren't they? Though, or at least half present. But I'm going to show you a better question. The better question is, where am I on the map at the moment? What is this part of the map intended to do in terms of where it's trying to get me? Is the brain getting what it needs right now? The activation, the mismatch, or the repetition? And if it's not yet, because we're not far enough down the journey, are we doing what this stage of the map needs us to do in order to eventually get to that point? Now notice how that feels lighter. Oh, am I doing this right? Oh, should I be doing it that way? But the question of just settling, I suppose, with the reality of, well, this is the approach that I like for this stage of the roadmap. The reality of saying, oh, my style is just as valid as anybody else's. I might be somatic, or I might be conversational, or I might use experiences and imaginational stuff. Am I doing that right? Dropping that question and accepting that, yeah, your way is just as valid. And so the new question is just, what does the brain need here? And am I moving along this lovely loose roadmap to helping the brain get it wants to deliver the transformation that it is innately capable of? And this is what changes when you have this underlying mechanism. You move from that place of anxious self-surveillance and imposter syndrome and doubt to just a sense of, I know where I'm meant to be. I know the job that I'm meant to be doing at this stage of the roadmap. And I know that the way I do it is fine. I know that I can choose whichever bricks from the Lego set is going to get me there. And even if I spot somebody out there on the internet doing it differently, using a different set of Lego blocks, that's okay. They're only doing something which is equally as valid as what I'm doing, and I'm only doing something that's just as valid as them. And so it's a different feeling in the body to do the work. It's much calmer. And this is what changes when you have the underlying mechanism, because instead of in a panic wanting to follow the protocol, because the protocol is the thing that you have to follow, when you understand why things work when they work, you're actually free to step off that ladder. You're actually free to go, okay, I don't have to follow the protocol here. In fact, you might even spot that that element of the protocol that you were so concerned about is actually pretty redundant, that it doesn't really do any job on the map. And so you can do something more effective instead. And you start really navigating the work. And so you can be conversational in one moment. You can switch to something experiential the next, because you don't need to have loyalty to any method. You don't have to have loyalty to any style. Your only loyalty is to what the client's brain needs in order to deliver transformation. So hopefully what you're feeling here is a couple of things. One, a real strong sense of permission. The way that you already work in terms of your instinct, in terms of your style, in terms of your preferences, as you learn more methodologies or have more methodologies at the moment, the ones that you notice are your favorites. That's all fine. And so you'll be feeling, hopefully, that permission that your way of doing things is just as valid as everybody else's. And so in that resting, in that settling down of that question, you can actually focus on what's more important, which is, where am I on the map? What's the job that I need to do here in the map with any of these tools and any style that feels right to me and my client? And how do I move through this map so I can be loyal to what the brain needs and deliver that to it? Because everything else that you're worried about in terms of, am I doing it right? And is this the right style? And shouldn't I be doing it like them? You can let all of that go. And you can think of the more important question of, nothing about me needs to be changed or replaced. I just need some sort of roadmap to guide me from where I happen to be now to the transformation that I master. So you don't need to become a different kind of therapist. You just need a framework that makes the kind of therapist or coach that you are already repeatedly transformational. So we've looked at three things. The first one is the brain has requirements. But amongst those requirements is not how you do the work or even what methodology. It just wants you to activate, mismatch, and repeat. And if you do that, doesn't care how you do it. The frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry them. And so that means that we can then align to a map which opens up a whole scope of styles and possibilities and approaches rather than being worriedly tied to the steps of a particular protocol. And the second thing is we saw the proof in the pudding, because I know from within the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy that my members are getting tremendous transformational results repeatedly. And yet when I look at their individual styles, they are very, very different to each other, and some even to me. And it's something that you'll notice when you join the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy, that this kind of flexibility and freedom is something that I'm repeating all the time. I'm teaching all the time that the way anybody does the work is not the way. The way I do the work even is not the way, it's a way. And so you saw an example of that where two different therapists were still getting transformational results because they were both triggering memory reconsolidation, but they were both doing it in very different styles, using different methodologies. And from the brain's point of view, it didn't matter a jot. And so once you trust the mechanism, you can let go of, am I doing it right? Is the way I'm doing it valid? Should I be doing it like they're doing because that looks good what they're doing and I'm doing this differently? You can drop all of that chatter, which isn't actually relevant chatter anyway, because the relevant question is the brain going to get what it needs from this work that I'm doing at the moment? And that's a question that you can actually answer, because at any point you can orient yourself to the roadmap of memory reconsolidation and know exactly the task that is at hand in that moment. So like I've said many times here on this episode, and inside the Coaching Academy, I'm saying it a lot because I want people to really get that your style is fine. And the set of Lego bricks that you collect in order to get to memory consolidation is as fine as any other, as long as it gets there. And so the frying pan doesn't care how you chop the onions. It just wants to fry them. Your client's brain doesn't care your style or your methodology or anything else. It just wants you to give the brain what it needs in order to trigger transformational change. So if this resonated, if you've been thinking about transformational work and how to do this repeatedly for a while, and you're ready to stop guessing why your best sessions are working, you're ready to step into something which is as agile and expansive and free as this, while still being on a roadmap that delivers change for you transformationally and repeatedly, then the Memory Reconsolidation Elite Coaching Academy is where I teach all of this stuff in full. When you're there, you'll notice that all the lessons are bite-sized, so you can make really quick progress. We have live case conference calls. We have live therapy demos, so you can see how I'm implementing this, while I'm also telling you that this is only one way of doing it. We've got a community of therapists and coaches doing exactly this work in this way, which is really hard to find out there. And you'll find all that at freshtherapists.com/coaching. So that's fresh therapists, plural, freshtherapists.com/coaching. So when you're ready, take a look. And if it looks like something that is for you, then we'd love to have you on the inside. Now, if you're listening to this and you're not a therapist or a coach, and you're not training to be, and you're not in the helping professions at all, and you're looking really for some change for your own personal development, maybe you are a therapist and coach and are looking too for some change for your own personal development, then you can find out more about working with me one-to-one at alunparry.com. Just remember that Alun Parry, the A-L-U-N, is how you spell my name. It's Welsh. I'm not Welsh, but the name is. So A-L-U-N Parry.com. And you can find out how to work with me there as well. But other than that, I hope this has been useful. I hope this has been liberating, really, and freeing. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.